Nanny with a dark past, and a very dark secret, and a millionaire who keeps a secret darker than her. Leave your like and a comment if you like our wonderful stories, and subscribe so you don't miss any of them. John Miller stood at the large bay window of his stately mansion, looking out over the beautifully landscaped gardens. It had been 2 years since his wife, Laura, passed away, and despite his wealth and success, John felt an emptiness that nothing could fill. His daughter, Emma, had been his rock, the one reason he pushed forward every day. But even her laughter and light were not enough to erase the shadows of the past. John knew he needed help. Emma deserved more attention and care than he could provide with his demanding work schedule. After a long search, he finally found Nina Harper, a highly recommended nanny with impeccable credentials. Nina had recently moved to Boston, looking for a fresh start herself, and the job seemed like a perfect fit for both parties. Nina arrived at the mansion early one Monday morning, her nerves hidden behind a warm smile. She was greeted by John and Emma at the grand entrance. Emma, with her inquisitive eyes and curly hair, immediately warmed to Nina, who had a natural way with children. "Welcome to our home, Nina," John said, shaking her hand firmly. "Emma has been looking forward to meeting you." "I'm happy to be here, Mr. Miller," Nina replied, glancing at Emma with a kind smile. "And I'm excited to get to know you, Emma." Emma giggled and grabbed Nina's hand, eager to show her new nanny around the house. As they toured the mansion, Nina couldn't help but notice the numerous family photos lining the walls, each one capturing a moment of joy and togetherness. One particular portrait caught her eye, a beautiful woman with striking features, standing next to John and a younger Emma. Nina knew this must be Laura, the late Mrs. Miller. The days quickly settled into a routine. Nina would arrive early in the morning, prepare breakfast for Emma, and help her get ready for school. In the afternoons, they would work on art projects, read books, or play in the expansive garden. John would often join them when he returned from work, grateful for the calm and happiness Nina brought to their home. One rainy afternoon, as Nina and Emma painted at the kitchen table, Emma looked up with a thoughtful expression. "Nina, do you miss your family?" she asked innocently. Nina paused, her brush hovering over the canvas. "Sometimes, Emma. But I have wonderful memories that keep them close to my heart." Emma nodded, seeming to understand in her own way. "I miss my mom a lot. Daddy says she's watching over us from heaven." Nina reached out and gently squeezed Emma's hand. "I'm sure she is, Emma. And she must be very proud of you." As the weeks passed, Nina and John began to develop a quiet understanding and respect for each other. John appreciated Nina's dedication to Emma, and Nina admired John's strength and commitment as a father. However, there was always a lingering sadness in John's eyes, a reminder of the loss he had endured. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Nina was tidying up the living room when she noticed a leather-bound journal on the coffee table. Curiosity got the better of her, and she opened it to find pages filled with Laura's handwriting. The journal chronicled Laura's thoughts and experiences, from her life as a young woman to her final days battling illness. Nina read a few passages, feeling a deep connection to a woman she had never met. She learned about Laura's hopes for Emma and her love for John. The entries were a testament to a life full of love, even in the face of adversity. Lost in thought, Nina closed the journal and placed it back on the table. She felt a renewed sense of purpose in her role with the Miller family, determined to honor Laura's memory by caring for Emma and supporting John in any way she could. But as the days went on, Nina couldn't shake a nagging feeling. There was something about the journal, a particular entry she had skimmed over, that seemed oddly familiar. She decided to revisit it when she had more time, hoping to uncover what was tugging at her subconscious. Little did Nina know, her discovery would soon unravel secrets from her own past, intertwining her fate with that of the Miller family in ways she never imagined. As the days turned into weeks, Nina Harper's presence became an integral part of the Miller household. John noticed how Emma's mood had improved since Nina's arrival. She seemed happier, more at ease, and her laughter once again filled the halls of their grand home. For John, it was a relief. He had worried endlessly about his daughter's well-being after Laura's death, and Nina's calming influence was a godsend. Nina had settled into her role seamlessly, but her curiosity about Laura's journal persisted. Whenever she had a quiet moment, she would find herself drawn back to the living room where the journal lay. Each time she opened its pages, she discovered more about Laura's life and her deep love for her family. Yet, there was always a nagging feeling, a sense of familiarity she couldn't place. One rainy Saturday afternoon, Emma was at a friend's house for a playdate, giving Nina some rare free time. John had retreated to his study to catch up on work, leaving the house unusually quiet. Taking advantage of the solitude, Nina decided to delve deeper into Laura's journal. She retrieved it from the coffee table and settled onto the plush sofa, the soft patter of rain against the windows providing a soothing backdrop. As she read through Laura's entries, Nina came across a passage that stopped her cold. "I never expected to meet someone like John. Our paths crossed in the most unexpected of places, and our connection was immediate. Yet, there are parts of my past I've kept hidden, secrets that even John doesn't know. There was a time before him, a love that was complicated and filled with regret. I fear that one day, the past might resurface and disrupt the life we've built together." Nina's heart raced as she read those words. There was a familiarity to the story Laura was recounting, something that struck a chord deep within her. She continued reading, desperate for more details. "His name was Michael. We were young and foolish, caught up in a whirlwind romance that couldn't last. I made choices I regret, and we went our separate ways. I never told anyone about Michael, not even my closest friends. It's a chapter of my life I hope to forget, but sometimes, late at night, I wonder what became of him." Nina's mind raced. Could it be possible that this Michael was her own father? Her mother, who had passed away years ago, had mentioned a lost love named Michael in her own journal, a man she had never fully moved on from. Could Laura's Michael and her mother's Michael be the same person? The coincidence was too strong to ignore. Nina closed the journal, her thoughts a whirlwind of questions and emotions. She needed to know more about this Michael, to find out if he was indeed the missing link between her mother and Laura. But how could she approach John with such personal questions without revealing her own secrets? The next day, as Nina prepared breakfast, she decided to take a subtle approach. She needed to gather more information without raising suspicion. When John entered the kitchen, she greeted him with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. How was your evening?" she asked, pouring him a cup of coffee. John accepted the coffee gratefully. "Good morning, Nina. It was productive, thank you. How was your night?" "It was peaceful," Nina replied. "I spent some time reading. You have quite the collection of books and personal journals." John's expression softened. Yes, Laura was an avid writer. She found solace in putting her thoughts on paper. "I haven't had the heart to go through all her journals yet." Nina nodded, sensing an opportunity. It must be comforting to have those memories preserved. "Did she ever write about her life before you met?" John took a sip of his coffee, lost in thought. "A little. Laura was always a bit private about her past. She mentioned a few relationships, but nothing too detailed." "Why do you ask?" Nina chose her words carefully. "I came across a passage where she mentioned a man named Michael. It seemed like he was an important part of her life before you met. Do you know anything about him?" John frowned, clearly surprised by the question. "Michael? She mentioned him once or twice. From what I gathered, they had a complicated relationship. I never pressed her for details, respecting her wish to keep certain parts of her past private." Nina nodded, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. She had hoped for more concrete answers but understood John's position. She decided to leave the topic for now, not wanting to push too hard. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Nina found herself once again drawn to Laura's journal. She flipped through the pages, seeking any additional clues about Michael. It was then that she discovered another entry, one that hinted at a connection she hadn't anticipated. Sometimes I wonder if my choices were the right ones. Michael and I had a bond that was hard to break, but our paths diverged. I've made peace with my past, but there are moments when I wish I could go back and change things. If only to know how different life could have been. Nina's mind was racing. The more she read, the more convinced she became that her mother's Michael and Laura's Michael were indeed the same person. The implications of this realization were staggering. Could it be possible that John Miller, the man she worked for, was somehow connected to her own family's past? Determined to find out more, Nina decided to approach John again, but this time with more caution. She needed to piece together the puzzle without revealing her hand too soon. Little did she know, her quest for answers would lead to revelations that would change all their lives forever. As Nina continued to piece together the puzzle of her past, the days at the Miller household carried on with their usual rhythm. Emma's trust and affection for Nina grew, and John found himself increasingly appreciative of Nina's presence, not just for Emma's sake but for his own as well. Yet, beneath the surface, Nina's mind churned with questions and suspicions. One evening, John invited Nina to join him for dinner after Emma had gone to bed. It was a rare occurrence, but John had noticed how tirelessly Nina worked and wanted to express his gratitude. "Nina, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for Emma and me," John said as they sat down to a simple but elegant meal prepared by the household chef. "You've brought a light back into our home." Nina smiled, touched by his words. "It's been my pleasure, Mr. Miller. Emma is a wonderful child, and it's been rewarding to see her so happy." "Please call me John," he insisted, raising his glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Nina echoed, clinking her glass with his. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily, touching on various topics from Emma's latest art project to John's business ventures. Eventually, the topic of Laura came up, and Nina saw an opportunity to steer the conversation toward Michael. "Laura seems to have been an incredible woman," Nina said thoughtfully. "I feel like I'm getting to know her through the journals she left behind." John nodded, his eyes reflecting a mix of fondness and sorrow. "She was. Those journals were her way of coping with everything. Her thoughts, dreams, fears. They're a part of her legacy." "Did she ever talk about her past with you?" Nina asked carefully. "About the people she knew, the experiences she had before you met?" John took a sip of his wine, considering the question. "Not in great detail. Laura was always somewhat reserved about her past. She mentioned a few names here and there, but nothing too specific." "Why do you ask?" Nina hesitated, choosing her words with care. "I've just been curious, especially after reading about someone named Michael. It seems like he was significant in her life." John's expression darkened slightly. "Michael? Yes, she did mention him. They had a complicated relationship, from what little she told me. But she never went into much detail, and I respected her wish to leave the past where it belonged." Nina nodded, absorbing this information. "It must have been difficult, not knowing everything about someone you love." John sighed, his gaze distant. "It was at times. But I trusted Laura. Whatever her past held, it didn't change how I felt about her or the life we built together." After dinner, Nina excused herself and returned to her quarters, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She needed more information about Michael, and there was only one place she could think to find it: her own mother's journals. They were stored in a box at the back of her closet, untouched since her mother's passing. That night, Nina retrieved the journals and began to read. Her mother, Catherine, had been a meticulous writer, much like Laura. As Nina pored over the pages, she found herself transported back to her mother's younger years, before she was born. It was in one of the older journals that she finally found what she was looking for. "Michael was unlike anyone I had ever met. Our love was passionate and intense, but it was also fraught with challenges. We parted ways because we couldn't reconcile our differences, but he will always hold a special place in my heart. I often wonder what became of him. Nina's hands trembled as she read the words. The similarities between her mother's Michael and Laura's Michael were too strong to be mere coincidence. She continued reading, hoping to find more clues. In a later entry, her mother had written, "After Michael and I separated, I met a wonderful man who became my husband. But Michael's shadow always lingered in the background of my mind. When I discovered I was pregnant, I couldn't help but wonder, could the child be his? I never had the courage to find out for sure." Nina's heart pounded in her chest. Could it be possible that John Miller was her biological father? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She needed proof, something more concrete than journal entries and suspicions. Over the next few days, Nina couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the brink of a life-altering discovery. She decided to approach John directly, but she needed to do it delicately. She didn't want to disrupt the fragile balance they had achieved in the household. One evening, while Emma was playing in the garden, Nina found John in his study, surrounded by papers and books. She knocked softly on the doorframe. "John, do you have a moment?" she asked, stepping inside. John looked up, surprised but not displeased to see her. "Of course, Nina. What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I've been thinking a lot about the past, Laura's, mine, and how they might be connected. I know this might sound strange, but I have reason to believe that my mother and Laura shared a significant part of their lives with the same man." John frowned, clearly puzzled. "What do you mean?" Nina hesitated, then handed him her mother's journal, opened to the relevant pages. "My mother wrote about a man named Michael, someone who was very important to her. After reading Laura's journals, I realized that they might have been involved with the same Michael. And there's more. My mother mentioned that she was unsure if I might be Michael's child." John's eyes widened as he read the journal entry. He looked up at Nina, a mixture of shock and realization dawning on his face. "Are you saying you think I might be your father?" Nina nodded, her heart in her throat. "It's a possibility. I don't know for sure, but the similarities and timelines match too closely to ignore." John sat back in his chair, absorbing the information. "This is a lot to take in, Nina. If what you're saying is true, it changes everything." Nina nodded, understanding his turmoil. "I know. But I needed to tell you. We can figure this out together, whatever the outcome may be." John nodded slowly, a determined look in his eyes. "We will. And no matter what, you're a part of this family, Nina. We'll get through this, one step at a time." As they sat in silence, the weight of their potential connection hanging between them, both Nina and John knew that their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the Miller household was charged with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Nina and John decided to proceed with a DNA test to confirm their suspicions, but the process would take some time. In the meantime, life continued as usual, though every interaction between them carried a new layer of complexity. Nina found herself more introspective than ever, contemplating the implications of potentially being John's daughter. She had always wondered about her father, a figure shrouded in mystery by her mother's reticence. The possibility that John, a man she had come to respect and admire, could be her father was both daunting and exciting. John, on the other hand, was grappling with his own feelings. The revelation had stirred memories of his past, of the passionate but tumultuous relationship he had with Catherine. He remembered her fondly, though their separation had been inevitable due to irreconcilable differences. The idea that he might have a daughter he never knew about filled him with both regret and hope. One evening, as they awaited the results, John approached Nina with an old photo album. "I thought you might want to see this," he said, handing it to her. "It's from my younger days, before I met Laura." Nina accepted the album with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. As she flipped through the pages, she saw images of a younger John, full of life and ambition. There were photos of him with friends, at work, and even a few candid shots that captured his playful side. But what caught her eye were the pictures of him with a woman she recognized from her mother's journals, Catherine. In one particularly striking photo, John and Catherine stood side by side, arms around each other, beaming at the camera. The love and connection between them were palpable. Nina's heart ached as she realized how much her mother must have cared for him. "Your mother was an incredible woman," John said softly, looking over her shoulder. "We had our differences, but I never stopped caring about her." Nina nodded, unable to tear her eyes away from the photos. "She wrote a lot about you, too. I never realized how much you meant to each other." They spent the next hour reminiscing about the past, sharing stories and memories. John recounted tales of his and Catherine's adventures, while Nina shared snippets from her mother's journals. The bond between them grew stronger as they delved deeper into their shared history. Meanwhile, Emma remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her. She continued to thrive under Nina's care, her laughter and joy a constant reminder of the innocence and resilience of childhood. Nina found solace in her daily interactions with Emma, cherishing the moments they spent together. One afternoon, while Emma was napping, Nina decided to take a walk through the garden to clear her mind. She found herself drawn to a secluded corner, where a small bench was nestled among the flowers. As she sat down, she noticed a familiar scent, the fragrance of the flowers her mother used to grow in their garden. Overwhelmed by emotion, Nina closed her eyes and let the memories wash over her. She remembered the long afternoons spent with her mother, tending to their garden, listening to stories of a world she had never known. It was in those moments that she felt closest to her mother, connected by their shared love for nature and beauty. As she sat there, lost in thought, John approached quietly, not wanting to disturb her. "Mind if I join you?" he asked gently. Nina opened her eyes and smiled, gesturing for him to sit beside her. "Of course not." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds being the rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. Finally, John spoke, his voice filled with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "Nina, regardless of what the test results say, I want you to know that you're already a part of this family. You've been here for Emma, for me, and that means more than you can imagine." Tears welled up in Nina's eyes as she listened to his words. "Thank you, John. That means a lot to me. I've always felt a connection here, even before I knew about our possible relationship." John reached out and took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "We'll face this together, Nina. No matter what, we'll figure it out." The days dragged on, each one filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. The results of the DNA test were in. Nina and John sat together in his study, the envelope containing the results lying on the desk between them. John took a deep breath and picked up the envelope, his hands steady despite the turmoil inside him. "Are you ready?" he asked, looking at Nina. Nina nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "Yes, let's do it." With a swift motion, John opened the envelope and pulled out the document. His eyes scanned the page, his expression unreadable. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up at Nina, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Nina, the results confirm it. You are my daughter." A wave of emotion crashed over Nina, leaving her breathless. She felt a mixture of relief, joy, and sorrow all at once. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at John, her father. John stood up and pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her as if he would never let go. "Welcome home, Nina," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. As they held each other, the weight of the past seemed to lift, replaced by the promise of a new beginning. They had found each other, against all odds, and now they had the chance to build the future together. The revelation of their true relationship brought about many changes in their lives. Nina officially became a part of the Miller family, her role shifting from nanny to daughter and sister. The bond between her and Emma grew even stronger, and John embraced his newfound role as her father with open arms. But their journey was far from over. As they navigated the complexities of their new family dynamic, they discovered more secrets and challenges along the way. Together, they faced each obstacle, their love and determination guiding them through the darkest times. And in the end, they found that the true strength of a family lies not in blood, but in the bonds of love, trust, and unwavering support. The days following the DNA revelation were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. Nina, John, and Emma began to settle into their new roles as a family, but the transition was not without its challenges. They had to navigate the complexities of their pasts while building a future together. One of the first changes was Nina's official move into the main house. John insisted that she no longer stay in the guest house, and instead, they converted one of the rooms into her own personal space. The room was bright and airy, filled with light and decorated with warm, welcoming colors. It was a stark contrast to the guest house, which now felt distant and impersonal. As Nina unpacked her belongings, she stumbled upon a box of her mother's old letters. Curious, she opened it and began to read. The letters detailed Catherine's relationship with John, from their first meeting to their eventual separation. Each letter was filled with emotion, capturing the highs and lows of their time together. One letter, in particular, stood out. It was dated shortly before Nina's birth and contained a heartfelt message from Catherine to John. In it, Catherine expressed her regret for leaving him and her hope that one day he would understand her decision. She also mentioned Nina, describing her as a precious gift and a reminder of their love. Tears filled Nina's eyes as she read the letter. It was a window into her mother's heart, revealing a depth of emotion she had never fully understood. She realized that Catherine's decision to leave John was not out of malice, but out of a deep sense of love and protection for her daughter. With the letter clutched in her hand, Nina went to find John. She found him in his study, surrounded by papers and files. He looked up as she entered, his expression softening when he saw the letter. "I found this," Nina said, handing him the letter. "It's from my mother to you." John took the letter and read it silently. As he read, his eyes grew misty, and he seemed to age before her eyes. When he finished, he folded the letter carefully and placed it on the desk. "Your mother was an incredible woman," he said softly. "I loved her more than anything, and losing her was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. But now, having you here, it feels like a part of her has returned." Nina nodded, her heart full of conflicting emotions. "I think she wanted us to find each other," she said. "In her own way, she was guiding us." John reached out and took her hand. "And now that we have, we'll make the most of it. We'll honor her memory by being the best family we can be." As the days passed, Nina and John grew closer, sharing stories and memories of Catherine. They laughed and cried together, finding solace in their shared experiences. Emma, too, sensed the change in the household and seemed to flourish in the newfound warmth and love. But amidst the joy and healing, there were still unanswered questions. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Nina voiced a concern that had been on her mind. "John, do you think my mother ever told anyone else about us?" she asked. "About you being my father?" John thought for a moment, his brow furrowed. "It's possible," he said. "Catherine had a few close friends, but she was always very private about her personal life. I can't say for sure." Nina nodded, deep in thought. "I wonder if there are other people out there who know more about our family history. People who might have pieces of the puzzle we haven't found yet." John looked at her, a spark of determination in his eyes. "If there are, we'll find them. We owe it to your mother and to ourselves to uncover the truth." Their search for answers led them to delve deeper into Catherine's past. They reached out to her old friends and acquaintances, hoping to uncover more information about her life before and after she left John. One of the first people they contacted was Eleanor, an old friend of Catherine's who had moved away years ago. Eleanor had always been close to Catherine and might have insights into her decisions and actions. Nina and John arranged a meeting with Eleanor at a quaint café in the city. As they waited for her to arrive, Nina felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She was eager to learn more about her mother, but also nervous about what they might discover. When Eleanor arrived, she greeted them warmly, her eyes filled with curiosity and a hint of nostalgia. She was an elegant woman, with a grace and poise that spoke of a life well lived. "John, Nina, it's so good to see you," Eleanor said, embracing them both. "Catherine spoke of you often, Nina. She was so proud of you." Nina smiled, her heart swelling with pride and sadness. "Thank you, Eleanor. We were hoping you could help us learn more about her. There are still so many things we don't know." Eleanor nodded, her expression thoughtful. Catherine was a complex woman, full of secrets and dreams. She always had a way of surprising people. Over the next few hours, Eleanor shared stories and memories of Catherine, painting a vivid picture of a woman who was both strong and vulnerable, loving and guarded. She spoke of Catherine's love for John, her struggles with their separation, and her determination to create a better life for Nina. One story, in particular, stood out. Eleanor recounted a time when Catherine had confided in her about a difficult decision she had to make. It was shortly after she discovered she was pregnant with Nina. Catherine was torn, Eleanor said. She loved John deeply, but she knew that their relationship was fraught with challenges. She wanted to protect her child, to give her the best possible start in life. Leaving John was the hardest decision she ever made, but she did it out of love for you, Nina. Nina listened intently, her heart aching with the weight of her mother's sacrifice. She realized that Catherine's decision to leave John was not a rejection of their love, but a testament to her strength and determination to protect her daughter. As they left the café, Nina felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was determined to honor her mother's memory by embracing her new family and uncovering the truths that had been hidden for so long. Their journey took them to new places and introduced them to people who had known Catherine in different stages of her life. Each encounter brought new insights and revelations, adding pieces to the intricate puzzle of their family history. One day, while sifting through old records and letters, Nina stumbled upon a document that piqued her curiosity. It was a letter from a man named Richard, dated several years before her birth. The letter was addressed to Catherine and spoke of a deep, abiding friendship that had lasted through many trials. Intrigued, Nina showed the letter to John. "Do you know who this Richard might be?" she asked. John shook his head, his expression puzzled. "I've never heard of him. But if he was important to Catherine, we should try to find out more." Their search for Richard led them to a small town on the outskirts of the city. There, they found an elderly man who had once been a close friend of Catherine's. Richard welcomed them into his home, eager to share his memories and stories. As they sat in Richard's cozy living room, he spoke of Catherine with a fondness that was palpable. He described her as a woman of great strength and resilience, someone who had faced many challenges with grace and courage. "She was like a sister to me," Richard said, his eyes misting with tears. "We went through so much together, and I always admired her spirit." Nina and John listened intently, absorbing every detail. Richard's stories added new layers to their understanding of Catherine, revealing a woman who had lived a full and vibrant life, despite the hardships she had faced. Through Richard, they learned more about Catherine's early years, her dreams and aspirations, and the challenges she had overcome. They discovered that Catherine had been a talented artist, with a passion for painting and sculpture. Her art had been a source of solace and expression, a way for her to process her emotions and experiences. Nina felt a deep connection to her mother as she learned about her artistic pursuits. She had always loved to draw and paint, and now she understood that this passion was a part of her heritage. Their journey of discovery brought them closer together as a family. They celebrated their newfound connections and the rich legacy that Catherine had left behind. Each revelation, Each new piece of the puzzle strengthened their bond and deepened their love for one another. As they navigated the complexities of their new family dynamic, they faced challenges and obstacles. But through it all, they remained united, drawing strength from their shared history and their commitment to one another. And in the end, they found that the true measure of a family lies not in the secrets and struggles of the past, but in the love and support they share in the present. The weeks that followed their visit to Richard were transformative for Nina, John, and Emma. The stories and memories they uncovered painted a vivid picture of Catherine's life, filling in gaps and answering questions that had long lingered in their hearts. As they delved deeper into their family history, they found themselves growing closer, united by a shared sense of purpose and discovery. One evening, as the autumn leaves began to fall, John suggested a family trip to the countryside. He had inherited a quaint cottage from his grandparents, a place he hadn't visited in years. He thought it might be a good opportunity for them to connect with nature and each other, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Nina was thrilled by the idea. She had always loved the countryside, with its rolling hills and tranquil landscapes. Emma, too, was excited about the trip, eagerly packing her favorite toys and books for the journey. The drive to the cottage was filled with laughter and conversation. They talked about their hopes and dreams, shared stories from their pasts, and made plans for the future. It was a rare moment of peace and contentment, a chance for them to truly enjoy each other's company. When they arrived at the cottage, they were greeted by the sight of wildflowers blooming in the garden and the gentle sound of a nearby stream. The cottage itself was charming, with its rustic wooden beams and cozy interior. It was a perfect retreat, a place where they could relax and reconnect. Over the next few days, they settled into a comfortable routine. They spent their mornings exploring the countryside, taking long walks through the fields and forests. They discovered hidden paths and secret glades, places where the world seemed to stand still and the beauty of nature was all-encompassing. In the afternoons, they would return to the cottage for a leisurely lunch, often made from fresh produce they had bought from a nearby farm. They would sit on the porch, enjoying the warm sunshine and the gentle breeze, talking and laughing as they shared their meal. Emma loved these moments, her face lighting up with joy as she played with her toys or listened to stories from Nina and John. She seemed to thrive in the open air, her cheeks rosy and her eyes sparkling with happiness. In the evenings, they would gather around the fireplace, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. John would often tell tales of his childhood, recalling adventures he had had with his grandparents at the very same cottage. Nina would share memories of her mother, painting a picture of a woman who was both strong and compassionate. One night, as they sat by the fire, John brought out an old photo album he had found in the attic. It was filled with pictures of his family, including several of him and Catherine from their younger days. As they flipped through the pages, they came across a photo that took Nina by surprise. It was a picture of John and Catherine, taken at a summer festival many years ago. They were standing together, laughing and holding hands, looking very much in love. But what caught Nina's attention was a small detail in the background. Standing a little way off, almost out of frame, was a young girl with strikingly familiar features. "That's me," Nina whispered, her heart racing. "I remember that festival. My mother took me there when I was a child." John looked at the photo, his expression a mix of wonder and realization. "I never noticed her before," he said softly. "We must have crossed paths that day, without even knowing it." The discovery was a poignant reminder of how intertwined their lives had been, even before they knew the full extent of their connection. It was a moment of serendipity, a glimpse into a past that had led them to where they were now. As they continued to explore the album, they found more photos that seemed to hint at their shared history. There were pictures of places Nina had visited with her mother, places that John had also frequented. It was as if their lives had been running parallel to each other, always on the verge of intersecting. The following morning, inspired by their discovery, they decided to visit some of the locations from the photos. They drove to a nearby village where a quaint café still stood, unchanged by the passage of time. It was the same café where John and Catherine had spent many afternoons, talking and dreaming of their future. As they sat at a table by the window, enjoying coffee and pastries, Nina felt a sense of connection to her mother like never before. She could almost see Catherine sitting across from her, smiling and chatting with John. It was a comforting thought, a reminder that her mother's spirit was still with them. Their journey continued as they visited a beautiful garden that Catherine had loved. The garden was a riot of color, with flowers of every hue blooming in profusion. It was a place of peace and serenity, a perfect reflection of Catherine's love for beauty and nature. They spent hours wandering through the garden, marveling at the flowers and taking in the tranquil atmosphere. Nina felt a deep sense of peace, as if she were walking in her mother's footsteps, experiencing the world through her eyes. As the days turned into weeks, their bond as a family grew stronger. They learned to navigate the complexities of their new relationship, finding joy in their shared experiences and strength in their love for one another. Nina and John continued to explore their past, uncovering more stories and memories that brought them closer together. They reached out to old friends and acquaintances, piecing together the fragments of their history. Each discovery was a revelation, adding depth and richness to their understanding of who they were and where they came from. Emma, too, flourished in this new environment. She reveled in the love and attention she received from both Nina and John, her laughter filling the cottage with a sense of joy and hope. She seemed to sense the healing that was taking place, her bright spirit a beacon of light in their lives. One afternoon, as they sat together on the porch, John took Nina's hand and looked into her eyes. "Nina, I want you to know how much you mean to me," he said softly. "You are a part of me, a part of Catherine, and a part of our family. I am so grateful to have you in my life." Tears filled Nina's eyes as she listened to John's words. "I feel the same way," she replied. "This journey has been incredible, and I am so thankful for the chance to get to know you and Emma. I know my mother would be proud of us." John nodded, his expression tender. "I believe she would be. And I believe she is with us, guiding us and watching over us." As they sat together, basking in the warmth of the afternoon sun, they felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. They had come a long way from the days of uncertainty and confusion, and now they were united by a bond that was unbreakable. Their journey was far from over, but they faced the future with hope and determination. They knew there would be challenges and obstacles, but they also knew that they had each other. And that, they realized, was the greatest gift of all. As the sun set over the countryside, casting a golden glow over the landscape, they stood together, hand in hand, ready to embrace whatever the future held. They were a family, bound by love and shared history, and they knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. Unveiling the past. Back in the city, life returned to its usual rhythm, but the time spent in the countryside left a lasting impact on Nina, John, and Emma. They felt more connected than ever, united by their discoveries and the newfound sense of family. However, the mystery of the photograph in John's bedroom still lingered in Nina's mind, urging her to delve deeper into her mother's past and her connection with John. One crisp autumn evening, Nina decided to talk to her grandmother, Helen, hoping she might shed light on her mother's secret past. Helen, now in her late 70s, lived in a charming old house filled with memories and family heirlooms. The house, like Helen herself, was a repository of stories and secrets waiting to be uncovered. As Nina entered the cozy living room, the smell of freshly baked cookies filled the air. Helen greeted her with a warm smile, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. She had always been supportive and understanding, and Nina felt comfortable discussing the mysteries that had been haunting her. After a few moments of small talk and sipping tea, Nina gathered the courage to bring up the subject. "Grandma, I need to talk to you about something important," she began, her voice tinged with apprehension. Helen's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of concern. "Of course, dear. What is it?" Nina took a deep breath and recounted the events that had unfolded over the past few months, from discovering the photograph to learning about the possible relationship between her mother and John. Helen listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each passing moment. When Nina finished, Helen sighed deeply and looked into her granddaughter's eyes. "There are things about your mother's past that I never told you, Nina. I always believed she had the right to share them with you when the time was right. But now, it seems you've stumbled upon these secrets on your own." Nina leaned forward, her heart pounding. "Please, Grandma, I need to know. It's important for me to understand my mother and myself." Helen nodded, her gaze distant as she recalled the past. "Your mother, Catherine, was a remarkable woman. Strong, independent, and full of life. But there was a time when she was very young, not much older than you are now, when she fell deeply in love with a man named Richard." Nina's eyes widened in surprise. "Richard? The same Richard we met at the art gallery?" Helen shook her head.
"No, dear.
This was a different Richard, a man who came into her life before you were born. They were inseparable, deeply in love. But circumstances forced them apart. Richard had to move away for work, and despite their best efforts, they lost touch." Nina listened, enraptured by the story. "What happened next?" Helen's voice softened. "Your mother was heartbroken. She threw herself into her work, trying to move on. And then she met John." Nina's heart skipped a beat. "John? My father?" Helen nodded. "Yes, John. They had a whirlwind romance, and he brought joy back into her life. But their relationship was complicated. They loved each other deeply, but John had his own burdens to bear, including a previous marriage and a young daughter." Nina felt a lump in her throat. "Emma." Helen's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Yes, Emma. Your mother adored her and tried her best to be a mother figure to her. But things were never easy. John's previous relationship and the responsibilities that came with it created a strain on their relationship." Nina absorbed the information, her mind racing with questions. "Did my mother ever tell John about Richard?" Helen hesitated before answering. "I don't know, dear. She might have, or she might have kept it to herself. But one thing is certain, she loved John deeply, despite the challenges they faced." Nina felt a mix of emotions, sadness, confusion, and a growing sense of determination. "Thank you for telling me, Grandma. This means a lot to me." Helen reached out and took Nina's hand. "There's something else you should know. After your mother passed away, I found a letter among her belongings. It was addressed to you, but I never had the heart to give it to you. I think it's time you read it." With trembling hands, Helen retrieved an old envelope from a drawer and handed it to Nina. The paper was yellowed with age, and the ink had faded slightly, but the words were still legible. Nina took a deep breath and opened the letter. "My dearest Nina, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. I want you to know how much I love you and how proud I am of the person you've become. There are things about my past that I never told you, not because I wanted to keep secrets, but because I believed they would only complicate your life. I fell in love with a man named Richard when I was very young. He was my first love, and losing him was one of the hardest things I ever endured. But then I met John, and he brought light back into my life. Our relationship was not without its challenges, but I loved him with all my heart. You are a part of both of these men, Nina. You carry their legacy and their love. Never forget that you are the product of two great loves, and that makes you extraordinary. Be strong, my darling. Follow your heart and always seek the truth. It will lead you to where you need to be. With all my love, Mom." Tears streamed down Nina's face as she read the letter. It was a revelation, a confirmation of everything she had discovered and more. She felt a profound sense of connection to her mother, understanding her in ways she never had before. Helen wrapped her arms around Nina, offering comfort and support. "Your mother was a remarkable woman, Nina. She faced her challenges with grace and strength. And now you must do the same." Nina nodded, determination filling her heart. She knew what she had to do next. She had to talk to John. It was time to confront the past and seek the truth, no matter how difficult it might be. The following evening, after putting Emma to bed, Nina sat down with John in the living room. The fire crackled in the fireplace, casting a warm glow over the room. John looked at her with concern, sensing the gravity of the moment. "Nina, is everything all right?" he asked gently. Nina took a deep breath and began to speak. "John, there's something we need to talk about. It's about my mother and your past." John's expression grew serious as he listened to Nina recount everything she had learned. The photograph, her conversation with Helen, and the letter from her mother. He remained silent, his face a mask of emotions. When Nina finished, John leaned back in his chair, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and understanding. "I always knew Catherine had secrets, but I never pried. I loved her for who she was, and I respected her privacy." Nina reached out and took his hand. "I believe my mother loved you deeply, John. And I believe she wanted us to find the truth, to understand our past and move forward together." John squeezed her hand, his voice filled with emotion. "Nina, I'm so sorry for everything you've been through. I want you to know that you are my daughter, in every way that matters. And I will always be here for you." Tears welled up in Nina's eyes as she embraced John. "Thank you, Dad. I love you." As they held each other, a sense of peace washed over them. They had faced the past, uncovered the truth, and come out stronger on the other side. The journey had been difficult, but it had brought them closer together, united by love and a shared history. Unearthing more secrets. In the days following their heartfelt conversation, Nina and John found solace in their newfound understanding. However, Nina's curiosity about her mother's past and her relationship with John only grew. She felt a deep need to uncover every aspect of the story, to truly understand the people who had shaped her life. One afternoon, while Emma was at school and John was busy with work, Nina decided to delve deeper into the attic. The attic was a treasure trove of family memories, filled with old trunks, dusty photo albums, and boxes of letters. She hoped to find more clues about her mother's life and her connection to John. As she climbed the creaky wooden stairs, the smell of old paper and cedar filled the air. Sunlight filtered through a small window, casting a warm glow over the cluttered space. Nina took a deep breath and began her search, opening one box after another. After several hours of sifting through old letters and photographs, Nina stumbled upon a worn leather-bound journal. The cover was faded, but she could make out the initials CL embossed in gold. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized this was her mother's journal. With trembling hands, Nina opened the journal and began to read. The pages were filled with her mother's elegant handwriting, chronicling her life from a young age. The entries were a mix of daily events, personal reflections, and emotional outpourings. Nina felt as though she was peering into her mother's soul, experiencing her joys and sorrows. One entry, dated several years before Nina's birth, caught her attention. July 12, 1989. "Today, I saw Richard again. After all these years, our paths crossed unexpectedly. He looked different, older, but his eyes were the same, filled with warmth and kindness. We talked for hours, reminiscing about the past, and I realized how much I had missed him. But our lives have changed. He's married now, with a family of his own. And I have John. I love John dearly, but seeing Richard again stirred old feelings. It's a complicated mix of emotions, and I'm not sure what to do. I have to be strong, for John, for Emma, and for myself. The past is behind us, and we must focus on the future. But I will always cherish the memories of my time with Richard. He was my first love, and he will always hold a special place in my heart." Nina's mind raced as she processed the entry. It was clear that her mother had loved both Richard and John deeply, and that her reunion with Richard had been an emotional turning point. She continued reading, hoping to find more insights into her mother's feelings and experiences. Several entries later, Nina found another revealing passage. September 23, 1990. Today, I received a letter from Richard. He wrote to tell me that he was moving to Europe with his family. It's a bittersweet feeling, knowing that we will be separated by an ocean. But perhaps it's for the best. Our lives have taken different paths, and it's time to let go of the past. John has been wonderful, supportive, and understanding. I'm grateful for his love and patience. Emma is growing up so fast, and she brings so much joy to our lives. I need to focus on them, on our future together. But there's something I need to do first. I need to visit my mother's grave. It's been years since she passed, and I feel a deep longing to reconnect with her. She was a guiding light in my life, and I miss her wisdom and strength. I will write to you again soon. Until then, take care. The mention of her grandmother's grave struck a chord with Nina. She realized that she had never visited the grave herself, never taken the time to pay her respects and seek her grandmother's guidance. It was something she felt compelled to do, a way to honor her mother and find closure. The next day, Nina told John about her plan to visit the grave. He understood her need for closure and offered to accompany her, but Nina felt that this was something she needed to do alone. She packed a small bag, including the journal and a few personal items, and set off for the small town where her grandmother was buried. The journey was long and filled with introspection. As she drove through the countryside, Nina thought about her mother's life, her struggles, and her enduring love for both Richard and John. She felt a deep sense of connection to her family, a lineage of strong, resilient women who faced life's challenges with grace and courage. When Nina arrived at the cemetery, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the rows of headstones. She found her grandmother's grave, a simple stone marker adorned with flowers. Kneeling down, she placed her hand on the cool granite and whispered a prayer. "Grandma, I'm here. I've come to seek your guidance, to find peace in the midst of all these revelations. Please help me understand." As she sat there in silence, the wind rustling through the trees, Nina felt a sense of calm wash over her. She opened the journal and began to read aloud, sharing her mother's words with her grandmother. It was a moment of profound connection, a bridge between the past and the present. After spending several hours at the grave, Nina felt a sense of peace and clarity. She knew that she had to return home, to share her discoveries with John and Emma, and to continue building their future together. As she drove back to the city, she felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. Upon her return, Nina sat down with John and shared the journal entries she had found. They talked late into the night, reflecting on the past and making plans for the future. It was a healing process, one that brought them even closer together. In the weeks that followed, Nina and John continued to explore their family's history, uncovering more secrets and stories that shaped their lives. They embraced the complexities of their past, understanding that it was these experiences that made them who they were. Nina also took the time to connect with Richard, reaching out to him and sharing the journey she had been on. Richard, now living in Europe, was moved by her story and grateful for the opportunity to reconnect. They exchanged letters and emails, sharing memories and reflecting on the paths their lives had taken. Through these connections, Nina found a deeper sense of identity and belonging. She understood that her family's history was a tapestry of love, loss, and resilience, and that she was part of a legacy that spanned generations. As the holidays approached, Nina, John, and Emma prepared to celebrate with their extended family. It was a time of joy and togetherness, a reminder of the importance of family and the bonds that held them together. And as they gathered around the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter, Nina felt a sense of contentment and fulfillment. She had uncovered the secrets of the past, found peace in the present, and looked forward to the future with hope and love. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had brought them closer together, united by the strength of their love and the enduring legacy of their family. And in that moment, Nina knew that they could face anything, as long as they faced it together. A new chapter. As the new year approached, the atmosphere in John and Nina's home was one of anticipation and renewal. The revelations of the past had brought them closer together, and they were eager to embrace the future with a deeper understanding of their family's history and connections. Nina, having reconnected with Richard and received his heartfelt responses, felt a sense of closure and reconciliation. Richard's letters provided insights into his life and feelings, which helped her piece together the missing parts of her mother's story. These exchanges, while emotional, allowed her to see the full spectrum of her mother's experiences and relationships. John, too, was determined to build on the newfound understanding within their family. He had been reflecting on his relationship with Nina, and the knowledge of her mother's past had given him a new perspective on their own journey together. He was committed to making their home a place of love and support for both Emma and Nina. The family decided to host a New Year's Eve gathering, inviting close friends and family to celebrate the fresh start and the bonds that had strengthened through their shared experiences. They transformed their home into a festive haven, decorated with twinkling lights and festive ornaments. The air was filled with the aroma of delicious food and the sound of laughter. As the guests arrived, Nina felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She wanted to share her story with those closest to her, to express her gratitude for their support and understanding. She knew that this gathering was more than just a celebration. It was a symbol of the new chapter they were about to embark on. After dinner, as the clock inched closer to midnight, Nina took a moment to gather everyone in the living room. She stood before her friends and family, her heart full of emotion. John stood by her side, offering a reassuring presence. "Thank you all for coming," Nina began, her voice trembling slightly. "This year has been one of revelations and challenges, but it has also been a year of growth and understanding. I want to share something with you that has deeply affected me and my family." She took a deep breath and began recounting the journey of discovery she had undertaken over the past months. The secrets she had uncovered, the connections she had made, and the profound impact it had on her and John. She spoke of her mother's love for Richard and John, and how those relationships had shaped her own life. Her words were met with silence, as the guests absorbed the emotional weight of her story. Some had known bits and pieces of the past, but Nina's account provided a fuller picture. When she finished, she looked around at the faces of her loved ones, seeking their reactions. Her grandmother, Helen, who had traveled to the gathering, approached Nina with tears in her eyes. "I am so proud of you, Nina. You've shown great strength and courage in facing the truth and sharing it with all of us." Richard, who had come from Europe for the occasion, stood up and embraced Nina. "I never imagined that we would reconnect in this way. Your mother was a remarkable woman, and I'm grateful for the chance to be a part of your life again." The room was filled with a sense of unity and healing. Nina felt a profound sense of gratitude for the support she had received from her family and friends. She knew that the journey was not over, but this gathering marked a significant milestone in their shared journey of healing and understanding. As the countdown to midnight began, the excitement in the room grew. Nina, John, Emma, and their guests gathered together, ready to welcome the new year with hope and joy. When the clock struck midnight, they raised their glasses in a toast to new beginnings and the promise of a brighter future. The celebration continued with dancing, laughter, and heartfelt conversations. Nina felt a renewed sense of purpose and connection. The past, with all its complexities and secrets, had been woven into the fabric of their lives, but it no longer held them back. Instead, it had strengthened their bonds and given them a clearer understanding of themselves and each other. In the days that followed, Nina and John continued to build on the foundation they had established. They focused on their family, nurturing their relationships and embracing the opportunities that lay ahead. They found joy in the small moments and comfort in the knowledge that they had faced the past together. Nina's journey had been one of discovery, acceptance, and growth. She had learned to navigate the intricacies of her family's history and had found a new sense of identity and belonging. As she looked forward to the future, she felt confident that she could face whatever challenges came her way, knowing that she had the love and support of her family by her side. With the start of the new year, Nina and John began to plan for their future, considering new adventures and opportunities that would bring them closer together. They were determined to honor their past while looking forward to the possibilities that lay ahead. And as the first sunrise of the year bathed their home in golden light, Nina felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. The journey had been difficult, but it had brought them to a place of understanding and connection. They were ready to embrace the future with open hearts and a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that together they could face anything that came their way. Embracing the future. The New Year's celebration had marked a significant turning point for Nina and her family. With the arrival of January, they faced the future with renewed hope and a deeper understanding of their intertwined lives. The journey of uncovering the past had brought its share of challenges, but it had also opened new doors and possibilities. Nina and John used the early days of the year to reflect on their plans and dreams. They spent weekends discussing their goals and aspirations, both for their family and individually. They knew that their past, with its complexities and revelations, had shaped who they were, but they were determined to forge ahead with a clear vision for their future. Emma, now more attuned to the changes within her family, began to thrive in her school and social life. The sense of stability and love at home had a positive impact on her well-being. Nina and John made a conscious effort to be present in Emma's life, supporting her endeavors and encouraging her growth. One of the first significant changes they made was renovating their home. They wanted to create a space that reflected their renewed sense of unity and optimism. They redecorated their living areas, adding personal touches and creating a warm, inviting environment. The renovation project became a symbol of their commitment to building a positive future together. In February, Nina decided to take a trip to visit Richard in Europe. She felt it was important to continue their relationship and express her gratitude for his role in her journey. John supported her decision, understanding that this was an opportunity for Nina to find closure and build a lasting connection with Richard. The trip was both emotional and uplifting. Nina and Richard spent time reminiscing about the past, discussing their lives, and sharing their hopes for the future. Richard had become a dear friend, and their conversations were filled with warmth and mutual respect. Nina returned home with a sense of peace, knowing that she had addressed her past and was ready to focus on the present. Back home, John and Nina continued to work on their relationship, strengthening their bond and exploring new ways to connect. They attended couples counseling, which provided them with tools to communicate more effectively and navigate any lingering issues from their past. The process was transformative, allowing them to grow individually and as a couple. In March, the family took a vacation together, a long-awaited opportunity to relax and enjoy each other's company. They traveled to a picturesque coastal town, where they spent time exploring scenic landscapes, enjoying outdoor activities, and simply being together. The trip was a refreshing break from their daily routines and a chance to create new, happy memories. Nina also took the time to revisit her mother's journal and reflect on the lessons she had learned. She realized that her mother's experiences and the love she had for both John and Richard had shaped her own journey. It was a reminder of the importance of embracing the complexities of life and finding strength in one's own story. As the year progressed, Nina and John continued to focus on their family and personal growth. They celebrated milestones and achievements, and they supported each other through challenges. Their relationship deepened, and they felt more connected than ever. The final chapter of their story was not defined by the secrets of the past but by the choices they made in the present. They chose to embrace their history, to honor their loved ones, and to build a future filled with love and hope. The lessons learned from their journey had strengthened their resolve to face whatever came their way, knowing that they were united in their commitment to each other and their family. In December, as the year came to a close, Nina and John gathered with their loved ones for a holiday celebration. It was a time of reflection and gratitude, a chance to acknowledge the progress they had made and to look forward to the future. They exchanged gifts, shared stories, and enjoyed each other's company, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and contentment. As they stood together, watching the snowfall outside, Nina and John knew that they had come through a transformative year. They had faced the past, embraced the present, and looked forward to the future with hope and optimism. Their journey had been one of growth, healing, and love, and they were ready to continue writing their story together. With the new year on the horizon, they felt confident and prepared for whatever lay ahead. The past had shaped them, but it was their love, commitment, and resilience that defined their future. And as they looked forward to the adventures and challenges that the coming year would bring, they did so with a renewed sense of purpose and a deep appreciation for the journey they had shared.